Oh, hi, and welcome back to a chatty video with me, Lily Howe, the founder and director of GRO Coaching and Consulting. Thank you so much for being here. So, this sobriety video is my third video. So, I want to ask you, how are you enjoying the videos so far? What would you like to see more of? And yeah, what would you like to hear? Because I ultimately, like I said, want to be chatting with you. And right now, a lot of the chat is taking place on my Instagram, which you can find the handle for in my description. So if you ever want to vote in around what sort of videos and topics you'd like to hear from and see, then please just write in to me there, drop me a DM, or often in my stories, I am asking everyone, what do you want to hear? What do you want to see? Where do you want to go? And that is why I am doing this video on sobriety. So it's quite a loaded topic, I find. So treat me gently, please. um, so sobriety, let's get into it. So for me, the context to this is I started drinking early in my life, I'd say, and not in a bad way. I wasn't like a tearaway. But I grew up with quite a positive drinking culture around me. And it was mostly just that my family would have, an extended family would have like a glass of wine for a special occasion, or like when we go for dinners out and things like that. I hadn't really grown up with any family members drinking really regularly. In fact, my dad, shout out to PDB, has always been, in my mind, really teetotal, although he didn't actually quit drinking until maybe I was sort of just into my primary school days, I'd say. So I remember him having a pint of beer at the rugby club and things when I was young, but I've got more memories of him really being completely teetotal, no drink at all, and always being on the orange and lemonades. That was his favorite. And my mum's been a drinker, but she's never been a drinker, if that makes sense. So she's always drunk alcohol, but she's not one to really drink very much at all. She's more of a G&T gal. And she's only a small lady, so one of those is just enough for her. So it's been an interesting sort of journey for me. So I grew up having even like a small sherry glass of wine when I would have been like sort of latter age of primary school, I'd say. And at that time, I didn't really like the taste of it. Like, let's be honest, no one really has the taste buds for wine. I don't really think until you're like in your mid 20s. But you drink it beforehand if you want to get drunk. But I had the odd sip here and there. There was one Christmas actually where me and my cousin didn't realize that Bucks Fizz was with champagne, and we went around clearing everyone's glasses, which everyone thought was really lovely. But what we were doing was clearing everyone's glasses and then drinking them behind the sofa. And so we must have been like 8 or 9 years old, I think, at the time. We were really young. And we had probably only drunk the equivalent of like one champagne flute's worth of Bucks Fizz each, not even. And we would just a giggly pile on the floor, and everyone just found it both shocking and also hilarious at the same time. But to me, I always perceived drinking as like the really adult thing that you did. And so if you were like having a glass of wine, or if you were like, again, more typically, I saw men drinking like beer and Guinness and cider, then that to me was like a sign that you were like more mature. And so I think when I was younger, I was sort of quite keen to grow up really quickly and be like that sort of like cool girl who drank wine, which I just could not really get my head into. And then in obviously like secondary school and stuff, when you start to become a bit of a like a early teen, you have parties and you do like your first, like you have your first like vomits sort of alcohol drinking experience. I think like everyone had that at like 14, 15, 16, where I am. I'm based in the UK. And you didn't really think about it too much. Do you know what I mean? When you're young, there wasn't really anyone who was saying like, oh, no, I don't fancy drinking. Like, not when I was growing up, at least. And then obviously when you move into being like actually 18 and you can go out drinking, although obviously some people do go out earlier if you have a fake ID. But yeah, when you can actually go out drinking at age 18 in the UK, I'd say that's where things get a little bit more spicy. So in the UK, we have quite a terrible culture, I'd say, of pre-drinking. And basically, what you do is you get really, really drunk at home, and then you go out to the club or the bar or whatever, and then you continue to drink at those places. But basically, what it came from was the fact that drinking out and about became really expensive. So we all would just buy our alcohol from supermarkets, get lashed at home, and then find our way into town. But what we do have quite a bit of an issue with in the UK is binge drinking culture. So there is also that sort of not really an expectation, but I think there was when you were young that like when you were going out, like you were going out to get drunk, you know, like you were drinking half a bottle of wine before you actually even went out. And, you know, when you're young and you have no tolerance to any of these things, even now, if I had like a glass of wine, I'd be like, so when you're young and you're doing this for the first time, like you are getting quite sloshed. And I was never really a drinker throughout the week. I've never been someone who would really even fancy it for like a fancy meal, really. And I've been with my now husband for a really long time, and we never have like had much of a relationship where we would go out drinking together, or that we would really go out for meals and have too many drinks. We did like once or twice when we first met when we were 18, and maybe into like being 20, but we would only really drink if we were going out and like going out to the club or going to a festival or a party or whatever it would be. So yeah, it's been a very like interesting, we have a very interesting culture in the UK is what I'm trying to say. And there's lots of people that I know that rarely binge, but they're more of a weekday drinker. You know, they'll have like a couple of glasses of wine when they're cooking dinner and all these different things. Anyway, the long and short of it is, in 2024, at the end of 2024, me and my husband looked at each other and we're both like, I don't really know if I want to keep drinking. Now, the backstory to that for him is that he gets really violently sick when he drinks. It doesn't matter if he drinks 2 pints of beer or 16, like he is the same violently ill regardless. And for me, it's because I've had way too many nights out where I drink really quickly and then I black out to a point. And it was getting me really anxious. So the next day I'd have this horrible blank space that my brain would just fill in with all the worst possible outcomes. And I was constantly thinking, I've upset somebody, I've said the wrong thing, I've made a complete arse out of myself. Like, it was obviously because alcohol is a depressant and it causes higher anxiety. Like, hangxiety is a coined term for a reason. But it just got to the point where I was like, am I even having that much fun? Because the next day and for days afterwards, like, I'm in actual turmoil. Like, I don't know what to do with myself. And some of my friends, if you're watching, you will have been on the other end of that phone where I've been like, what the hell have I done? And I've had to be basically talked off a ledge because I was convinced that like I was the worst person ever. And largely all it was like I'd just gone around flipping my hair on the dance floor like I thought I was Beyonce or some shit, but it was never that bad. But it just was the anxiety afterwards that was just not worth it for me. And I didn't really start to have those blackouts until I was in my sort of mid to late 20s, and then it happened more frequently than it didn't. And I had a bit of a staggered approach to being sober. So for a while, I introduced a 5-drink rule, and I couldn't stick to that. And it turns out 5 drinks is also quite a lot of drinks, so I was still getting quite drunk. And then I tried to do a 3-drink rule instead, and again, I just couldn't stick to it. Now, I think I said this in my first video, but I haven't been diagnosed with ADHD. But I'm quite sure that I have got that, because I resonate with like 99.9 reoccurring % of the traits that people talk about when you have ADHD. And basically, one of the things that comes up with ADHD and drinking is that you're in your first drink, you start to relax and you feel more neurotypical, apparently. I don't know, I've read this online somewhere. But what I can say is I would get the first drink and I could feel myself relax, and I could feel my swirly whirly thoughts suddenly start to calm down, and just everything softened a little bit. And I felt a little bit more like, I don't know, just like warmer and a bit more chill. But the ADHD brain in me wants more of that. So I would just keep drinking to chase that same feeling, to the point where I'm then really drunk. And I don't have that off switch. You know how some people will have a few drinks, then be like, yeah, I feel a bit. No, that doesn't happen. I just keep going. And the trouble is, as well, is I don't know if I present as being okay, but like then people would continue to give you drinks. So then you're feeling just as bad, because you end up drinking even more than what you meant to, because people will just be like, wait, have a shot, wait, have this drink or whatever. So I'd tried to limit my alcohol and I just couldn't do it. And I am someone who works really well with an all or nothing mentality. It's not for everybody. But having that sort of conversation with my husband, we both decided, do you know what? Let's try to go sober for 2025. We'll do the year and we'll see how we get on. And I actually felt so like that it was unobtainable that I actually said, look, I don't really know if I want to commit to the whole year. I think I'll just say 6 months and we'll see how we go. So we get to the sort of, we start doing this, and it was really helpful because having someone who is doing it with you changes everything, because you are so much more accountable when you've got someone that you are doing it with, and you can keep checking in on each other. And likewise, for Con and I, we were going to lots of the same events. So then it was very easy because we were both like, okay, well, we will be each other's sober partners. So it was interesting. And going a whole year, you cross every path that you could possibly cross, I think, whereby you might want to drink. So for us last year, we had our own wedding party. We were both stone cold sober. We went to Ibiza and we were in the clubs at like 3 and 4 a.m, stone cold sober. We went to other people's parties, stone cold sober. We went on nights out together, or with our friends, stone cold sober. We've done dinners out. We've done Christmas. We've done basically, I think, everything that you could come across in 1 year. We've done it all. And I think that's what's becoming the most interesting thing to me, actually, is I've now decided to be sober, effectively. I've decided I'm not going back to drinking because I've now been in all these various situations where I haven't. And I just don't really feel like I've missed anything. Like, there's so many good 0% alcohols out there now that I just don't really feel even like I'm that left out. You know, like I said with my dad back in the day on the orange juice and lemonades, like that he stuck out like a sore thumb in front of his friends who were all drinking pints of like Budweiser. But now you can be on Beck's Blue and no one would know any different. And you could be drinking alcohol-free wine and no one would know any different. Alcohol-free champagne, all these different things. Alcohol-free cocktails, you know, mocktail now, like mocktail markets are huge now. Although that's one thing I do really resent, having to pay £10 for what essentially is herbs in water. Like, come on now, at least I'm going sober, you know, give me the freaking money off, Christ. So you're still, unfortunately, paying a small fortune when you go out drinking, even when you're drinking sober. But the biggest learning for me being sober this last year and to date is just how much you use it for certain social situations. So for me, it was about letting go and unwinding. So what I had to do a lot of work on is, how do I let go and unwind within a group setting when we're out and about without having a drink? And you have to build this newfound resilience for talking to new people, so stone cold sober, being able to make a complete tit of yourself, knowing that you're sober, like all these different things. And actually, what I think happens is you become very acutely aware that when you're sober and you're out, no one else knows that apart from anyone that you've told, like your friends or whatever. So they all just think you're drunk. So it's fine. No one's thinking anything else of you. And even if you're out and people are like, do you want a drink? And you just say no, then like that's sort of normal sometimes, I think, anyway, like when you're at a certain point in the night. So I haven't found it that difficult in that sense. I think the thing that I found the hardest was the drunk chatter. Like when everybody starts to get a little bit like at you and you're just like, wow, like this is a lot. But equally, again, like who cares? Like no one cares. It's quite fun. Like you're just in it all. And there is something as well where I feel like I get vicariously like high from everybody's drunk fumes, where you do start to let go a little bit because everybody else around you's letting go, and it's a bit of like a collective energy. And once I get dancing, nothing else matters. So I think I found dancing sober actually way more fun because I love to dance. So I was just throwing myself around everywhere, just having the best time. And that's what I found in Ibiza as well. Like as long as I was dancing, I was pretty happy. But yeah, I think, people are like, oh, don't people annoy you because they bump into you and they stand on your feet? Well, people bump into you and stand on your feet when you're drunk, and that still annoys me then. So not really. It doesn't really make much of a difference. And actually, everyone's pretty nice when they've had a few drinks. So if you're like, oh, ouch, they're like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. And then you still make friends in the bathroom, even when you're sober. Because that's happened to me as well last year, which is amazing. So I just don't feel like I'm really missing out on anything. I think one thing that has been interesting is being coined like boring or mostly boring, actually, to be fair, is the word that comes out the most. It's like, oh, well, you need to be fun. So like have some have some drinks. And I just don't really get that because I don't think I'm particularly fun when I'm really drunk. I'm just the one who's making the biggest ass of themselves. But I feel like I'm equally the same on nights out now than before. I'm still dancing, I'm still getting involved in the conversation. So like, how does that make me any less fun? And some people get so blottoed that all they can do is just slump in the corner and be sick in their hands. So that's not exactly fun either, is it? So it's a bit of an interesting comment to make. And I think I've just stuck with that because I've just been like, I've been that boring person for other reasons before. When I've been, historically, when I used to be a personal trainer and I was eating really strictly, and even now, like I eat pretty healthily 99% of the time. And people would be like, oh, go on, have a cake. And I'd be like, oh, thanks. But I'm just, trying not to eat as much processed food at the moment. Oh, well, don't be boring about it. Like, just get a donut for fuck's sake. And you'd be like, well, just told you I don't really want to have the donut. Like it's not aligned to my goals. And it's not like at one time I probably was quite disordered with my eating, but now I'm not disordered with my eating. I know it's coming from a very true place, but you're still noted as boring. You're the boring one because you're not eating shit. You're the boring one because you're not going out drinking. And I just couldn't really care less about people saying that to me now, really. I just think like, I don't know, I feel pretty good and I'm having a lovely time when I'm out and about. And generally, that's not anybody that you actually care about who's saying that to you, because the people that love you are just like, oh, this is great. Like more props to you, So I don't really mind the stigma that comes with it. And actually, I find that like it's really helped me think more about, like I said, how we use this in certain situations and how it's also helped me be more resilient because I've gone to lots of networking events and things where I've been like, oh, I feel a bit uncomfortable here. But, I'm on the 0% and I'm networking. And when you've done something when that's really hard and that you didn't think you could do, but you've done it completely stone cold sober and you've enjoyed it, and at the end of the day, it's still a good outcome, you think, oh, actually, that wasn't that bad. And then you can do more things like that. So it's been really interesting in so many different ways on how it's sort of helped me be more resilient and build a bit of a muscle for doing uncomfortable things and being that sort of odd one out sometimes as well in settings. And it is interesting because I think, the younger generation are doing more and more no drinking. I've heard recently from a friend of mine who works at the university down here in Exeter, which is all about how they're thinking about doing different freshers activities that are non-drinking related because it's such a trend. So it's all really interesting, very interesting dynamic. And look, this is also not me coming from a place of superiority at all. Like, I am very much like, do what you think is best for you. If you're someone who can have a few drinks and just be totally fine, like, more like, hats off to you. Do you know what I mean? Like, I just am not that person. I can't just do that and be myself straight afterwards. And I never feel like I've done any of these things to for anyone else other than for myself, and it's not about anybody else either. It's just that I felt like I needed to do this for my own mental health and my sanity. And I think that, you know, I feel really good for having done it, and now I just feel at a point where I think, well, I don't really know why I'd bother going back at this point, really. So yeah, so if you're thinking about going sober, or if you've done like a dry January, maybe you're in dry January at the moment, then let me know how you're finding it. And likewise, you know, like I said, there's absolutely nothing wrong with having some drinks. This is purely just my experiences and my story and my thoughts around it. And like I said, I love going out still with friends of mine who are drinking. It's still really good fun, but I'm just not. And that's where we are. So let me know what your thoughts are. Did you like this video? If you did, please like it, subscribe for more information and more chatty videos that we share together as well. Let me know what you'd like to hear more of. And yeah, would love to hear any thoughts and experiences that you've shared. And I will catch you very soon. Thanks again.